Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I just want to start with, to put things into perspective. As Rabbi Mashiach mentioned, Olami is a movement, an umbrella movement of representing over 320 different places around the world. College campuses, community programs, and clearly a diamond in that constellation is EMET. It's the people, the personalities, the qualities, the students, the results, the support of the community, the bonding. It's very, very unique. And a couple of months ago, I was in Israel lecturing in one of the training programs. And the yeshiva that had this particular program asked me to speak to all the students. And one student stood out as the finest of the group. And I turned to him, I said, "What's your name?" He says, "My name is Mashiach." Rabbi Mashiach's son. And I told him, I said, "Listen, there's a great future for you. Finish the courses and come back to EMET." And I think that speaks not only about Rabbi Mashiach, but it speaks about all of the great leaders that are themselves role models to their children and to the community. And I just want to, there's going to be time this evening for everyone to hear all about all the wonderful things EMET does, and you don't have to hear that from me. But this is a very unique group. And it's this group that has, I believe, a very unique responsibility. Now, everybody thinks that the unique responsibility of this group is to support EMET with more money, and of course that's a good idea. And the more you give, the greater the results. And we're counting on you, there's no question. But I think this is, at this time of history, and this time of the year, there's something else we need from everybody in this room. You know that between the weeks from Pesach to Shavuot are 7 weeks. And the second day of Pesach, there's a special mitzvah that we bring the Omer. We bring the first grains. And the first grains are barley grains. And the last grains we bring are 7 weeks later, right before Shavuot. And during those 7 weeks, we're counting every day. Sfirat HaOmer. One day closer, closer, closer to that 49 days. 49 days. From barley to wheat. What do you do during those 49 days? Well, you say a prayer. Good, you pray. The Sefarno actually explains that these 49 days perhaps are the most important 49 days during the year. Because it's during these days that we know whether or not we're going to have crops the whole year. It's in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God. Will it rain? Will wheat sprout? Will we have what to sustain the community, the families, the world? These weeks, if God wants to succeed, wants the Jewish people to succeed, then we'll have bountiful crop. If he doesn't want us to succeed, there'll be droughts. You can have all the rain in the world, but it doesn't sprout properly. We have nothing to eat. You'll have a despondent, despaired community. Nothing there. And therefore, the Sefarno tells us, you know what you do during these days? You pray. This is a time of tefillah, of prayer. You put your work in. You do all you can. And these particular weeks are Mesugal Tefillah, framed for prayer. Everybody here is a leader of EMET. You ever pray for them? You think you write a check and that's it? People who worked on the charity campaign, such devotion. Did you ever turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, listen, we're saving a community? God, let it sprout. God, please allow my contribution to be meaningful and transformative. Don't take God for granted. It's not happenstance that we're meeting right in the middle of the Sfirat HaOmer, right in the middle. This is a time to continue sowing the seeds and praying for the success of EMET. And the Torah, immediately after telling us to count 7 weeks, the next mitzvah that it introduces is, by the way, when it's over, when you have a bountiful crop, leave the corners of your field for others. If God gives you a bracha, what are you going to do with it? Another car. Another expansion. How about another Jewish soul? How about a generation or 2 or 3 or 4? I'm going to tell you a story, and with this I'll end. Olami had a conference a number of months ago, and EMET was very, very well represented. And in the Friday night discussions, we had different industrialists and world Jewish leaders and business people, successful people, who were available to answer the students' questions. And one of the people there was Howard Jonas. Howard Jonas is the founder of IDT. Howard Jonas is a major industrialist. He's a big supporter. And somebody had the chutzpah, the temerity, to ask him, Mr. Jonas, why in the world are you supporting Jewish outreach? I wasn't too happy about that question. And he thinks, and he thinks, and he thinks, and he says, you know, I have a number of companies. And one of the companies is a medical research company. And we have solved, we believe this or not, Lev, we believe we're on the path for a cure for stage 4 of pancreatic cancer. And it's into trials, it's also into government trials, and we believe we're very close. And I'm sitting there listening, what answer the question. What do you tell me about your company? So he says, let's say it works. And we have a cure. And the cure will allow for someone to live another 10, 20 years. He says, that's great. But when I give to outreach, I'm giving to generations to live. I'm giving to children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, great-great. I had somebody, can I go a couple more minutes? You sure? With your permission? I know I'm looking at the sushi also, but you know, it's a killer. But I thought if I walked by, I got closest to the... A number of years ago, there was a young lady who spent a lot of time in our house. She was an actress. She was actually a television actress. and she spent a Shabbat meal somewhere and then ultimately became more interested. And there was a Sudat HaMafseket. She was with me for Yom Kippur. And she's sitting at my table. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the Sudat HaMafseket before Yom Kippur, you're very serious and everything. You know, this is Yom Kippur is coming. And all of a sudden, I see she's smiling and laughing and smiling. And I said, Kimber, what are you doing? You know, it's Yom Kippur. What are you? She says, I was just thinking, I'm sitting here in the house of a rabbi right before Yom Kippur eating this meal. And a year ago, I was taking my dog to church for the blessing of the animals on the same day. Kimber now, after being one of the most dynamic, inspiring role models in Olami, got married, lives on the West Coast, 3 children, a husband who also was part of the programs, building a community, who are willing now to leave everything that they have because they want to find a better place to educate their children. What kind of an investment is that in one person? It's not one. It's 2. It's 10. Let's go 2-3 generations. And now we come back to EMET. The Bukharan community is the most vibrant, vital part of New York City Jews. There's a Mesorah, there's something, if you scratch deep inside, it's there, it comes out. There's something about the Bukharan community that when you scrape down deeply, some things come out that allowed Judaism and spirituality to remain in the most difficult of times and places. But if you don't scratch, you're not going to reach it. And if we don't reach it in this generation, we're not going to have another chance. That's the facts. Look what's going on in the world. Intermarriage is 70% for the non-observant. Do the math. So therefore tonight is a time to reaffirm commitment to EMET. But most of all, to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He nurture us, He sustain us, He inspire us, He motivate us, and He allows us to do what He wants us to do. Thank you.